Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's one other concept I want to throw in to kind of hit to touch back on all the words we've been using and make sure they mean something to everyone. Um, this word wasn't stated exactly, but I'm going to bring it up. It's called utility, and I'm going to tie it back to your dinner glasses example, Eric. What's the utility of a verifiably unique wine glass at dinner? Well, you can put your drink in it and drink the wine. That is its utility in that case. It may have other forms of utility as well. It may be beautiful. It may be valuable because it's an antique. There's lots of fun things there. But this concept of utility, how would you go about defining the utility of
Yeah.
a token or a cryptocurrency?
Well, the utility will vary dramatically based on the use case, of course, the sector, the particular need at that time, and why it was created. The idea of utility goes right into the notion, as I think Salim rightly put, of programmability, right? The real value of these NFTs is going to come in their programmability and their network awareness, the ability to change state over time, with long running code, and to actually communicate outward. So what you want the NFT to do, that's its utility. Now, at the first stage of this transition, where people are starting to realize that they should and can find their highest purpose outside of pure speculation, the first utility that we're seeing is around access. It's a ticket. So, and it may not do much, right? It's just the ownership of it acts as a ticket, which gives me access into an IRL, and there's another term for you, and in the real world, access to something like a VIP meet and greet with Taylor Swift, or getting into this restaurant, as opposed to a virtual environment like a metaverse type environment will get you into an area of it, or into the entire space, or into an area of it that you couldn't otherwise. So that's the first step. The next step in utility that people are going to realize, with the token not doing much itself but still having utility, will not only be to give you access but to give you abilities. So as you move from access to abilities, it's like, not only can I get in, but what can I do now? So we've built at Vatum a really, really sophisticated entitlement system specifically for this, where you can ask an arbitrarily complex question to it and say, well, first of all, for access, do you have this token? How long have you had this NFT? What level, or are you for certain types of access? And then it goes to abilities. What are you allowed to do? Well, if you're in a real world environment, maybe it lets you turn on and off the lights, or change the colors, or change the music. There's things where you now connect to IoT devices that start to get you into really interesting industrial applications and factories, and all sorts of permissions and security allowances. Then you move into the virtual world, and it's the same thing. What are you allowed to do? What are you allowed to change? Who are you allowed to be? It's the entirely new entitlement system that is based on ownership, because of the secure nature and the knowledge, because you can also use two-factor authentication and biometrics to know that this is the person who has the wallet, and that wallet is connected to ownership of these things and those permissions. You now opens up an entirely new wave of capability. But now, if you move away from the basics of access and entitlements around abilities, now you start to ask yourself, well, what can this thing do? And that's where it starts to get insanely fun, because the utility is only limited to your imagination. I mean, this object. Imagine the old Tamagotchi characters. It's the utility. What's the utility of a dog? Well, I don't know. For me, there's massive utility. It keeps me happy, or he and she keep me happy. They happen to be right here. And we offer utility to each other in companionship. But now you can start to say long running processes, and having a virtual pet or a plant that, if you water it, is going to grow and start to sprout gifts. So there's an interesting engagement modality in gamification. What makes someone come back to your engagement, right? Because you're not just surreptitiously targeting everyone, you have to earn every day your keep. Just like with any relationship, is it going to fall apart if you don't do the work and show up and communicate effectively? So now, let's say I gave you a plant from my company, and every day that you don't come back and don't water it, virtually, virtual NFT, it starts to wither. But you do come in and water it, it starts to grow. And then as it grows, it starts to sprout gifts. And those gifts are other NFTs, which fall into your wallet and then create other forms of engagement, et cetera. So now that I'm engaging, I'm creating, I'm gamifying. And so there's utility in the notion of the gamification, and in the notion of how that leads to further engagement. There's also utility around very simple things, such as gathering first-party data. So it was asked before, when do we think, or why do we think this is such a seminal moment in the shift from speculation to engagement and advertising, marketing, and loyalty are going to break first? It's because of first-party data. The customers want to know, the brands and the companies want to know who their customer is. The way you do that is you can create a value-based relationship where they tell you, and they say, sure, I'll opt into this relationship, and now I'm going to let you communicate with me, and I'll tell you that I live in Aspen and I love this type of music, or I'm over 50 and I like basketball, whatever it is about me, because I'm going to get value for that. That's called zero-party data. So gathering zero-party data, which is data that you willingly give up for value, in addition to first-party data, which is data more about you that is gleaned but in an ethical and legal way, is now going to inform the utility of these NFTs to bring value to you that is personalized at scale. And so I think what we're seeing now is the advent of the next generation of NFTs, which is really where we started in 2015, but is now going to become prevalent as objects of engagement that have utility for a purpose between often the creator and the owner themselves.
You just, we were talking about interface moments earlier, and we talk about engagement a lot today. Something very interesting happens when you have NFTs that you can combine to create other unique forms. I think there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences that emerge from that sort of thing, because when you combine access here and some other right over there and data over here, some people are going to get good at combining these things to possibly create not what any of the individual creators intended. So that's going to be interesting. That's going to be really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that too much. That one's going to be a takeaway for me to dive into a little bit.